I'm trying to earn the right to call myself A$AP Drizzy one day. When I met A$AP, like I've said in the interviews, this guy right here just right off the bat did one of the kindest things anybody's ever done. Like came to check me, brought me a bottle of Chris. I'm honored this man accepted. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm honored to be here, man. A$AP, for real.
Another day, another rapper dissing Drake, and today it's one of Drake's former collaborators and friends, Mr. Pretty Flacko, A$AP Rocky. Now, it might surprise certain fans that A$AP Rocky is dissing Drake, because at one point in his career, Rocky said that Drake was the only one that put on for him, and that he would forever owe Drake. But if we really put our thinking caps on and remember that almost every beef that Drake has started because of a woman, then the answer as to why A$AP Rocky is now dissing Drake is actually very obvious. And by the end of this video, you'll probably be wondering why this beef did not start a lot earlier.
There's a lot of little nuggets in both of their disses that if it wasn't for these breakdowns, and salute to, guys like this, Rapaholics, because I think they directly get it.
The only person that put on for me when I ain't have nobody was Drake. I'm talking about Drake was the first person to put on, like, before anybody. He didn't want to sign me.
Yeah.
He didn't want to, it was like, yo, that's raw talent, yo. Like, you gotta shine, yo.
But to understand their rocky relationship, no pun intended, then we'll have to rewind the clocks and take a step back to May of 2011, where A$AP Rocky allegedly quit selling illegal substances and decided to go all in on his rapping career. This seemed to be a success because by August of 2011, Rocky had gained a small buzz within New York and on the internet through tracks like Purple Swag and Peso. Thanks to the success of these records, Rocky was able to secure a $3 million deal with the label RCA Records for him and his A$AP collective. In October of 2011, the same month that Rocky got signed, he dropped his first mixtape, the classic project Live Love A$AP. Meanwhile, just a month after Rocky releases his breakout mixtape, Drake, on the other hand, is at the pinnacle of the rap game, dropping what many consider to be his best album with Take Care, and also at the time being engaged in a long-running on-again, off-again relationship with this girl who you guys might know. Her name is Rihanna. See, Drake and Rihanna actually met way back in 2005 at a diner in Toronto, where Rihanna shot the music video for her first song, Pon de Replay. Drake apparently appears in the video as an extra, but I did my best to dig through that video to find Drake in it, and I couldn't see him, so let me know in the comments if you guys could snipe him in there. Drake did confirm this was the first time that the two met when he presented Rihanna with the MTV Video Vanguard Award at the 2016 VMAs. Drake had said, "The first time I met Robin Fenty was in 2005. I was introduced to her as the kid who played background music at this restaurant as people ate their dinner." And I think one of the biggest problems within their relationship was that Rihanna always kind of treated Drake like he was still that kid who played background music. See, they started dating a few years later in 2009 when Drake was just on the come up and Rihanna was already one of the biggest artists in the world, who had also just broke up with Chris Brown, who was another one of the biggest artists in the world at that time. So rebounding with a young underground rapper like Drake was almost like dating a fan. Drake confirmed this after they broke up in 2010, where in an interview with the New York Times, he was asked about his situation with Rihanna and he said, "I was a pawn. You know what she was doing to me? She was doing exactly what I've done to so many women throughout my life, which is show them quality time, then disappear. I was like, wow, this feels terrible." But fast forward back to 2011 and Drake isn't that underground rapper anymore. He just dropped his massive album Take Care, and Rihanna appeared on the title track and in the music video where the two were cuddling up together, so it's safe to say they were on pretty good terms at this point. They were also seen making out in a restaurant called Buona Notte in Montreal, and I'm from Montreal. That restaurant shut down a few years ago and the food kind of sucked, so Drake's taste in women might have been good, but his taste in restaurants definitely wasn't the best. And at the same time that Rihanna and Drake's relationship seemed to be going strong, A$AP's Rocky career also seemed to be going strong, as his first mixtape was gaining him a lot of buzz, while simultaneously Drake's Take Care album was bringing him into an entire new stratosphere of mainstream success. As a result of the album's success, he took it on tour in early 2012, performing in stadiums of 15,000 people, something he had never done before up until that point. But because of the R&B sounds on Take Care, Drake's label pushed for him to take an R&B singer on the tour as the opener. Drake refused this and instead, ironically, handpicked A$AP Rocky and Kendrick Lamar to be the openers of this tour. At this point, Kendrick and Rocky, who are now some of Drake's biggest rivals, were extremely grateful for the opportunity to be able to perform at such big arenas with Drake. We won't really touch on Kendrick's gratitude within this video, but A$AP Rocky praises Drake as being one of the first rappers to put on for him at an early point in his career, saying that he'll always be grateful to Drake for the opportunities that Drake gave him.
I forever owe Drake. The only person that put on for me when I ain't have nobody was Drake.
Now we're in the middle of 2012. Drake is on tour with A$AP Rocky and still seems to be in an on-again, off-again relationship with Rihanna. So much so to the point that in the summer of 2012, Chris Brown, Rihanna's prior ex-boyfriend, tried to send Drake some bottles when they were both at the same nightclub together, and Drake returned the bottles back to Chris Brown's table with a letter that said, "I'm sleeping with the love of your life." The two proceeded to have an all-out fight within the club, throwing bottles at each other, and while Chris Brown seemed to lose the fight, leaving that nightclub with scratches all over his face from the bottles that Drake threw at him, he did seem to win back over Rihanna, as we did not hear much about her being with Drake, but we did see her and Chris Brown in pictures and songs together later that year in 2012. But what was also important to note around this time is that another man has stepped into the picture of this love triangle, and that man goes by the name A$AP Rocky. See, after Drake introduced Rocky to a much larger mainstream audience by bringing him out on tour in the beginning of 2012, by the end of 2012, Rocky became hip-hop's next superstar, and as a result, Rihanna called on him to be featured on the remix of her song Cockiness. And just after that song was released during the 2012 VMA Awards, Kevin Hart hosted the show and made a bunch of jokes about Drake and Chris Brown fighting over Rihanna, but at the same time, they probably should have been fighting A$AP Rocky and not each other, as A$AP went on stage to perform his remix with Rihanna and grabbed her butt in a more confident display of affection than we've ever seen Drake give Rihanna. But this didn't seem to bother Drake, as he was busy recording his next album, Nothing Was the Same, and during a studio session with 2 Chainz, the two came up with the song Effing Problems that was a certified hit. However, Drake felt like the song was a throwaway, so he wanted to give it to someone who was quote-unquote popping at the time. So he decided to give the song to Kendrick Lamar, who was also on tour with him and A$AP Rocky. Kendrick ended up doing a verse for the record, but decided not to use it for his album Good Kid, Mad City because he felt it wouldn't fit the album's concept. So instead, he gave the song back to Drake, and Drake then finally sent it to A$AP Rocky, who recorded his verse and used it as the first single for his album, Long Live A$AP. Now, this was at the height of the Drake stimulus package. See, back then when Drake would hop on a feature on your song would instantly become a hit automatically, and this song definitely helped A$AP Rocky reach a much higher level of mainstream success than he'd ever seen before in his career up until that point in time. So if A$AP Rocky was thankful for the opportunities that Drake gave him at the beginning of 2012 by bringing him out on tour, by the end of 2012, he was probably a lot more thankful since Drake just basically gifted him his first top 10 hit. And thanks to that success of that record, A$AP Rocky was able to drop his first album just a few months later in the beginning of 2013. In promotion of his debut album, he decided to join Rihanna on the road as the opener to her North America tour. Now, who knows what went on during that tour, but Rihanna did seem to go back and forth from Drake to Chris Brown as she was touring with A$AP Rocky. And by 2014, Drake was back to praising Rihanna, calling her his ultimate fantasy in an interview, and she was also seen spotted with him during his tour in Europe of that year. However, by 2015, Rihanna would continue to downplay her relationship with Drake by saying in an interview with Vanity Fair that the last real official boyfriend she had was Chris Brown. And to put it into perspective, Drake and Rihanna were spotted multiple times backstage together, spotted by the paparazzi hugging and kissing and whatever, and meanwhile, Rihanna's doing interviews where she's saying that her only official boyfriend was Chris Brown, downplaying any relationship she might have been having with Drake. Meanwhile, Drake is calling her his ultimate fantasy. But it didn't seem to hurt Drake's ego too much, as he would continue going back with her as the two released their biggest song together called Work in the beginning of 2016. Around that same time, Drake would drop a track called 4 p.m. in Calabasas, where he would confirm that he was the one fighting for A$AP Rocky to come out on tour with him back in 2012, where he rapped the bars, "They told me to bring an R&B singer on the road, and I told them no, and drew for Kendrick and Rocky. I'm trying to make the right decisions with the world watching." And at the same time that Drake is showing a lot of love to A$AP Rocky in 2016, he's also showing Rihanna even more love as she appears on his next album, Views, and she also makes appearances at both nights of Drake's 2016 OVO Fest. And on the second night of the show, Drake turned to Rihanna and said, "You showed up 2 nights in a row for my city. You might have to go half on a baby." Just a couple weeks later, Rihanna was the winner of the Video Vanguard Award at the MTV Music Video Awards, the same award show where 4 years prior A$AP Rocky was grabbing her butt on stage, but this time around in 2016, Drake was the one presenting her this award, and the two shared a pretty embarrassing moment on stage, as Drake basically professed his love for Rihanna during his presentation speech, saying that she's someone I've been in love with since I was 22 years old, she's one of my best friends in the world, she's a living, breathing legend in our industry, basically showering her with praise. And at the end of the speech, Drake leans in for a kiss, but Rihanna turns her head, showing that either she did not want to be affectionate with Drake, or at the very least, did not want the world to see them being affectionate with each other in public and getting the wrong impression of where their relationship currently stands. Her and Drake continued to go strong for a couple more years up until around 2018, where Rihanna does an interview with Vogue where she says her and Drake are no longer speaking anymore. More specifically, she said, "We don't have a friendship now, but we're not enemies either. It is what it is." Drake made some weird comments a couple months later about their relationship as well during an interview with LeBron James, where he said, "As life takes shape and teaches you your own lessons, I end up in this situation where I don't really have the fairy tale, like, oh, Drake started a family with Rihanna and this is like so perfect." He was talking about how at the time Pusha T just exposed him for hiding a kid with Sophie Brousseau, a former adult film actress who will play a very important role in the relationship between A$AP Rocky and Drake in just a couple moments within this video. But at the time when Drake was commenting on his situation with his baby mother during a sit-down with LeBron James, he was saying he doesn't have that perfect fairy tale like he would have if he was with Rihanna and they had a family together. And then he ended it off by saying, "It looks so good on paper. By the way, I wanted that too at one time." Basically emphasizing his regret for things not working out between him and Rihanna the way that he probably hoped they would. Now, at the same point in time, Drake and A$AP Rocky still seem to be on good terms, but A$AP Rocky and Rihanna seem to be on even better terms as the two reconnected together in public for the first time at a Louis Vuitton fashion show in June of 2018. Rihanna also invited A$AP Rocky to her fashion show called the Diamond Ball of September 2018, around the same time that she said her and Drake no longer had a friendship. Now, going forward, Rihanna's comments about Drake would become a lot more salty in 2019. She did an interview with the New York Times where they asked her if her next album would include any features from Drake, and Rihanna responded by saying, "Not on this album, that's for sure. Not anytime soon. I don't see it happening." At the same time, her and A$AP Rocky would begin to be seen out in public a lot more together, but that didn't stop Drake from still being on good terms with Rocky, as he made a surprise appearance at Rocky's 2019 show in LA. And by 2020, A$AP Rocky and Rihanna seemed to make their relationship official, but that still didn't seem to stop Drake from both flirting with Rihanna while also maintaining a friendship with A$AP Rocky. On Yams Day in 2020, Drake gifted A$AP Rocky a A$AP Yams chain, and he even invited Rihanna to his party in 2021 in Hollywood at a venue called the Delilah, which, remember the name of that venue because it'll play an important role later on in this story. And funny enough, Rihanna actually brought A$AP Rocky as her date to that party that Drake invited her to. In 2020, Drake also left a comment on an Instagram Live that said, "Rihanna, drop your next album right now." And Rihanna responded to this by saying, "Give Drake some water," basically saying that he's thirsty. And just a couple months after showing up to Drake's party with A$AP Rocky, Rihanna would then proceed to cover up the matching tattoo that she got with Drake back in 2016, showing that she moved on to different things and no longer wanted any sort of attachment to the relationship that her and Drake once had. Now, we wouldn't hear much from either party involved until Drake dropped his 2023 album For All the Dogs. There were very interesting bars on that album that seemed to be aimed at both A$AP Rocky and Rihanna. On one of the songs titled Another Late Night with Lil Yachty, Drake rapped, "I ain't pretty Flocko, this stuff gets really rocky." Basically a double entendre since A$AP Rocky's nickname is Pretty Flocko, and Drake is basically saying here, he's not soft like A$AP Rocky. If you mess with him, it could get quote-unquote really rocky. Now, it's important to remember that For All the Dogs came out a little over a year after Rocky and Rihanna announced that they had just had their first child together, and Drake would continue dissing the couple on For All the Dogs on his record Fear of Heights, with an entire verse specifically dedicated to Rihanna, denying that he's hung up on her and that A$AP Rocky is basically stuck in a relationship with her and that Rihanna wears the pants in the relationship. Drake rapped, "Why would they make it seem like I'm still hung up on you? That can never be. Gal can't run me, better to him than me, better it's not me, I'm anti. Now, this is obviously a reference at Rihanna for a couple of reasons. Number one, being her most recent album is called Anti, and Drake is constantly using the word anti within this verse to reference a woman that he claims to have no regrets not being with anymore, and considering the fact that that was the album that the song Work was on, which was basically a hit that was gifted to Rihanna by Drake and his OVO label, as his artist Party Next Door wrote the entire record, and it featured a verse from Drake. He also raps Gal Can't Run Me, and not only is Rihanna's Instagram name Bad Girl Riri, but the word gal is a derivation of the word girl, which comes from the English-based Creole languages that are spoken in the Caribbean, specifically in Jamaican Patois or Beijing Creole, which derives from Barbados, Rihanna's hometown. Drake is essentially saying here that he's heard all the rumors in the media that he's madly in love with Rihanna and upset that he can't have her, and he questions this by saying Rihanna can't control him, that he's not hung up on her anymore, and that it's quote-unquote better him than me, meaning that it's better that it's A$AP Rocky that's hung up over Rihanna than Drake. Drake continues talking to this mystery girl by saying the intercourse used to have with her was average with you. Yeah, I'm anti because I had it with you, which is in relation to the fact that Rihanna's album, Anti, the album whose biggest hit is a song with Drake, On that album, there's also a song called Sex With Me where she sings Sex With Me So Amazing. Drake is flipping that here by saying it's not amazing, it was just average. Drake continues to rap, I'm auntie like your daddy's sister, auntie like a family picture, and I never understood this bar, aside from it being like a poor double entendre for auntie, meaning like I'm auntie like I'm against you, but also auntie as in like an auntie in a family, like your dad's sister would be your auntie. And I mean, this bar seems so stupid to me that I felt like there had to be some sort of hidden meaning here. He had to be referencing Rihanna's dad's sister for some sort of certain reason, and I couldn't find much information on this except for an old article from 2015 that features a picture of one of Rihanna's white aunts named Betty Fenty, who was actually an Irish white person. Many people didn't know that Rihanna's father is actually biracial, so I mean, this might be a reach, but it's possible that when Drake says, I'm auntie like your daddy's sister, he's literally saying that both of them come from a mixed background. Drake also has this weird habit of sending subliminals to an artist, but making the disses so personal that only the artist directly knows that Drake is talking about them. It's not information that's known to the general public, so it's possible that when he says, I'm auntie like your daddy's sister, that could be a bar that only Rihanna understands, as when they were in a relationship together, it's possible that Drake came across some private information about Rihanna's family life, and he's referencing it in that line. But Drake concludes this song by sending a very direct shot at A$AP Rocky when he says, that man, he's still with you, he can't leave you, you go on vacation, I bet it's aunties. Obviously, Drake saying A$AP Rocky is still with Rihanna and he can't leave her is in reference to the fact that they now have a child together and seem to be in a very serious relationship. However, Drake is also alluding to the fact that Rihanna most definitely wears the pants in the relationship, as she is the clear dominant breadwinner, and for that reason, she controls the relationship and A$AP Rocky can't necessarily leave her on his own terms. Also, when he raps, you go on vacation, I bet it's Antilles, he's talking about Rihanna's hometown, as the Antilles are a group of islands that are plotted across the Caribbean Sea. One of the islands in the Lesser Antilles is Barbados, which is Rihanna's home country. Rihanna is known to constantly go on vacation in her hometown of Barbados, and what Drake is saying here is that A$AP Rocky does not dictate how they spend their money, where they go on vacation, or what they do as a couple. Instead, he's forced to be attached to her hip and fly out to vacation with her family and do the things that she wants to do. These are pretty petty disses and came very left field. And for those reasons, they didn't garner any response from Rihanna or A$AP Rocky. However, Rihanna's choreographer did post a funny video on her Instagram story of Drake leaning in for a kiss from Rihanna after presenting her the 2016 award at the VMAs, and Rihanna famously moving her head away and dodging that kiss from Drake. Now, we won't spend too much time on this part of the story, but on that Drake album, For All the Dogs, where he was dissing Rihanna and A$AP Rocky, Drake also had a track with J. Cole called First Person Shooter, where they were talking about the big three in hip-hop, and J. Cole basically said that the top three in rap at the current moment was him, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar would respond to this record on Metro Boomin and Future's album in 2024 on the track Like That, where he said, F the big three, it's just big me. Future and Metro Boomin would go on to put out 2 collaboration projects together in the beginning of 2024, and all the features on that album seem to be from artists who had problems with Drake. Obviously, Kendrick was dissing Drake directly, but they also featured verses from The Weeknd and Rick Ross, who have problems with Drake as well. On the second album that Future and Metro Boomin dropped together, there's a song called Show of Hands, which featured A$AP Rocky on it. Rocky raps, verse 1, call up Pluto Metro, should have put me on the first one. Basically saying, why'd you guys wait so long before giving me the chance to diss Drake? I could have dissed him on the first album along with Kendrick. But Rocky definitely seized his opportunity on this second album to most definitely diss Drake as he continued to rap, guys swear their girl's the baddest, I just bagged a worse one. This is a callback to Drake's Fear of Heights record where he said that he had way badder women than Rihanna. Rihanna also goes by Bad Girl Riri on Instagram, and Rocky here is claiming that his girl Rihanna is badder than any other woman that Drake has been with. He makes these disses even worse by continuing his verse saying, guys in their feelings over women, what, you're hurt or something? I smashed before you birth, son. Flocko hit it first, son. This is a very cold line, as Rocky is no longer talking about Rihanna here. Or actually, it might be a double entendre, and he could still be referencing Rihanna, but he's most definitely talking about the fact that he actually dated the mother of Drake's son Adonis before Drake had that child with her. So when Rocky says, I smashed before you birth, son, Flocko hit it first, son, he's saying that he was with Drake's baby mother before she ever had Drake's kid. He's also referencing Drake's track In My Feelings, where he says guys are in their feelings over women, and it's very obvious that Drake has been deep in his feelings over his breakup with Rihanna. Rocky continues rapping, heard you dropped your latest album, funny how it came and went. Basically saying, I heard that you dissed me and Rihanna on your last album, but that album received very poor reviews from fans and did not obtain the same level of success as your previous releases. Now, Drake comes back at Rocky on his diss track Family Matters, and while the track was mainly aimed at Kendrick, some of the best disses within that record were actually aimed at Rocky. Drake rapped, "Rock him talking smack again, mad because you hit my baby mother first, but do the math on who I was hitting then." Now, Drake here does an excellent job at flipping A$AP Rocky's whole narrative. See, the narrative was that Drake was mad that A$AP Rocky slept with his baby mother, and Drake here is basically saying, you're all excited that you slept with my baby mother before I did, but really take a step back and think, who was I dating at that time? Because if you do the math on the timelines, you'll notice that right before Drake impregnated the mother of his son in 2017, he was in a very public relationship with Rihanna in 2016. Drake continued dissing Rocky by saying, "I didn't even know you rapped still because they're only talking about your fit again. Probably gotta have a kid again before you think of dropping any music again. Even when you do drop, they're gonna say you should have modeled because it's mid again." This is in reference to the fact that since 2015, Rocky has been fairly inactive in music, dropping just one album in 2018, which did not get the praise that his earlier albums did. Drake here is basically saying, "I forgot you still rap because you're basically only known for modeling at fashion at this point, and when you do drop your next album, people are going to tell you to just go back to focusing on fashion because it's going to be mid, just like the last album you dropped." Then Drake references the fact that A$AP Rocky told Future and Metro Boomin that they should have put him on their first collaborative project to diss Drake instead of waiting until the second project. And Drake responded to this by saying, "Smoking Fenty bout they should have put you on the first one, trying to get it in." Fenty obviously being the name of Rihanna's clothing brand, but also being an abbreviation for the word and substance fentanyl. So Drake is basically saying here that A$AP Rocky is tripping if he thinks that Metro and Future should have put him on the first album, because he didn't deserve a headlining position in this show of the entire music industry versus Drake. Rocky didn't deserve to be a frontliner like Kendrick and kick off the whole beef. Instead, he deserved to be on the second album once the beef kind of died down and people paid less attention to it. Then Drake raps, "Ask Fring if this is a good idea the next time you cuddled in that bed again. She'll even tell you to leave that boy alone before you get your head split again." When he says ask Fring if it's a good idea, he's referring to Rihanna because Fring was the nickname that Drake gave Rihanna while they were dating. It was the nickname of one of the main characters within the show Breaking Bad, which was a show that Rihanna actually introduced Drake to. So Drake here is basically saying that even Rocky's wife Rihanna would tell him it's a bad idea to try and diss Drake because Drake will destroy him lyrically. Now, Rocky's been teasing his upcoming album, Don't Be Dumb, and recently DJ Cast One revealed that he's heard portions of the album, and on the project, Rocky will apparently be addressing his issue with Drake. He said, "I heard A$AP Rocky's definitely addressing a lot of the main topics that are happening out there right now. Let's just say the list keeps growing on strong." He said this in an interview with Ebro, and Ebro asked him if Rocky is still on Drake's list, and Cast One replied by saying he's going to be cemented on that list after this, basically stating that if Drake didn't already hate Rocky before, once Rocky drops his album, Drake will definitely hate him. Now, it's important to note that before Kendrick even started this 20 versus 1 battle between Drake and the entire rap game, A$AP Rocky did take some short subliminals at Drake in early 2024 on Kid Cudi's album where he rapped, "These guys can't stomach me, they gotta go get a mandrake." A mandrake is some type of plant, and Rocky here is basically saying that Drake can't stand him, and Rocky comes back with even more subliminals from the track he just dropped, which seems to be the first single from his new album. See, it's riddled with Drake disses, most notably in the last bar of Rocky's verse, where he raps, "These guys want my wife bad, the people want my next track." Obviously in reference to the fact that Drake is still hung up on Rihanna, but also a response to Drake saying that he forgot Rocky was still a rapper and that everyone will say Rocky's next album is going to be mid. Rocky flips that by saying, "The people still want my music badly, the same way that you still want my wife badly." Now, throughout the whole track, Rocky keeps ending his lines by saying "like that." The first bar he raps is "slept with your girl because she's like that." He also raps "pull up to the trenches with all my jewelry, yeah, I'm like that." And he's using the same flow and referencing the title of the same track that actually kicked off this entire beef, the song that Kendrick initially dissed Drake on, which was called Like That. Also, when he says he'll pull up to the trenches with all his jewelry, this is a reference to Drake telling Kendrick that he will never snatch a chain off of Drake. Now, it's ironic because Kendrick initially started this whole battle off by saying he's snatching chains and burning tattoos. Then Drake says that he'll never snatch a chain off of him. Then Drake also proceeds to say that he hits the Delilah with all of his ice. The Delilah is a club in LA, which is Kendrick's hometown, so Drake is here basically saying that he'll go to Kendrick's hometown with all of his ice, but he's also referencing the same exact venue that he hosted a party at where he invited Rihanna and she showed up with A$AP Rocky. Now, it would be a reach to say that Rocky was referencing this line when he says he'll pull up to the trenches with all his jewelry because he's like that, but it's just ironic that Rocky's referencing the very first diss track that kicked off this entire battle, while also referencing the fact that he's not scared to go out with his jewelry on, which was a theme within Kendrick and Drake's back and forth. And at the very same time on the Family Matters record, when Drake was dissing A$AP Rocky and Rihanna, he also says he'll hit the Delilah with all of his ice, which was the venue that he hosted a party at that he invited Rihanna to, and Rocky is coming back here to say he'll pull up to the trenches with all of his chains on. No direct link, just a bit of an interesting coincidence that all these bars kind of align with the same theme, and some other bars that don't necessarily have a direct link to Drake but could be in reference to either him or Travis Scott is when Rocky raps, "Don't compare me to that P-U-S-S-Y, I don't like that." Or, "Swipe a pretty girl off her feet, this a hijack, why's your guy flexing like he's me, ain't even like that." Or the line, "Guys F around and stole the flow and y'all like that." See, there's a lot of bars in this song directed at someone biting Rocky's flow or biting flows in general, and Drake obviously is known to bite flows. Kendrick was just calling him a colleague, not a colonizer, for the fact that he runs to Atlanta to steal the style and sound of other popular artists within the culture. And Flocko here is basically saying, like, people effed around and stole the flow, and y'all like that? Like, you guys like his music, even though you know he's just appropriating and stealing from this culture? But at the same time, all the bars about people comparing someone else, this quote-unquote P-U-S-S-Y boy or soft boy or whatever, to A$AP Rocky could maybe necessarily more be a diss towards Travis Scott instead of Drake, just because there's been a lot more comparisons between Travis Scott and A$AP Rocky, whereas Drake and A$AP, I mean, aside from sharing the same girl at one point, or maybe actually multiple girls, yeah, aside from the women they've been with, there's not much similarity in the sound or style that they portray within their music or within their fashion choices. And these do kind of just seem like subliminals, not even warning shots. I wouldn't even give them that, because they do seem very, very non-confrontational and indirect. So if this is really Rocky trying to come at Drake and show him that no one should compare the two, and that Drake is soft, and that, you know, he's still taunting the fact that he ended up with Rihanna, no matter how much Drake will cry in interviews about how he loved her in the past, and now will cry in songs that he was never hung up on her. Yeah, as much as Rocky can still angle that over Drake's head for the rest of his life, as Drake has publicly admitted that at one point he did wish that he could have started a family with Rihanna, and that dream has seemed to most definitely crumble and fall to pieces. It doesn't take away from the fact that Drake did drop some very accurate bars about A$AP Rocky's placement within the culture today. And as excited as myself and probably many fans would be for a new A$AP Rocky album, I think we can all admit that he's not the one we would turn to or depend on to drop a scathing diss track that can accurately dissect Drake's character and dismantle all of the flaws that Drake carries in such a poetic way, the same way that someone like Kendrick Lamar or Pusha T once did. At the same time, Drake has went against battle-tested MCs like Meek Mill or Common over very similar issues relating to women. And while you could argue that it's debatable on whether or not Drake won the beef with Common, he most definitely unanimously won his beef against Meek Mill. And with him being so desperate to be re-embraced by hip-hop culture after his massive loss to Kendrick Lamar, I could see Drake using Rocky as a pawn, knowing that he'd be a very easy challenge, and shifting his focus away from a bigger titan like Kendrick Lamar to a lesser lyrically skilled MC like A$AP Rocky. It'd be an easier challenge for him, and nothing would put him in the good graces of hip-hop fans more than him winning another rap battle against a respected MC. Plus, what route could A$AP Rocky really take that a guy like Kendrick, a guy like Pusha T, or a rapper like Joe Budden hasn't already taken against Drake? We already know he uses ghostwriters. We already know he might have had surgery to get a six-pack or to get a nose job. We already know that he struggles with identity issues as his father left him at an early age, leaving him to be raised by his white Jewish mother. And while coming in the game as an outsider, he did his best to assimilate within hip-hop culture by stealing the sounds, culture, and lifestyle of artists who actually came up in an upbringing more congruent with the essence of where hip-hop originated from. I mean, these were the most major attacks at Drake by the most serious opponents he's ever went up against, and I don't know how Rocky would put a more creative spin on any of these disses. I forgot to mention the PDF file allegations. Those were definitely the most serious assassinations at Drake's character that he's ever experienced. But what could Rocky say to come at Drake, right? What's he gonna say? That he stole the love of Drake's life? I mean, as you could see by this story, Drake was with her long before A$AP Rocky even entered the music industry, and while Drake is one of the pivotal reasons why A$AP Rocky initially was able to obtain the mainstream success that he had early on at such a fast pace, A$AP Rocky, at least from the information that we know publicly, has no involvement in the reason why Drake is no longer with Rihanna. So unless A$AP Rocky exposes some information that we never knew about why Drake and Rihanna were collaborating frequently in 2016 and kissing on stage, but then 2 years later in 2018, Rihanna says they're no longer even friends. Yeah, unless he can expose something about that timeline, I don't see what Rocky could come at Drake with that will be any more scathing than the disses that Drake has already came at Rocky with, or the disses that he could potentially aim his way. See, as flawed as Drake is as a character, he's went up against some very strong MCs and has arguably held his own in several of the battles he's been a part of. Even if you compare the disses that both Drake and A$AP Rocky threw to each other in the last year alone, I would argue Drake's disses at Rocky were much more hard-hitting than Rocky's disses at Drake. And Drake is battle-tested and a very active rapper. Meanwhile, Rocky has taken years in between each album release and has also dropped several singles that have flopped, which may have been a result of why he's delayed his album so often, which could add validity to when Drake rapped. Even when you do drop your album, they're gonna say you should have went back to modeling because your album is again gonna be mid, just like your last one. But who knows, maybe we just haven't heard it and Rocky really is in his peak form lyrically. But based off what we have heard, I don't think he's in the shape lyrically that he needs to be in if he wants to go toe-to-toe against Drake. But we'll see when he drops this album, and while he may never win a battle against Drake, he did win something that Drake will never have, which is the love and family and respect from the girl that Drake always wanted, Rihanna. See, throughout this entire story, there's constant themes of Rihanna downplaying her relationship with Drake, being spotted with Drake one day but then with another guy the next, trying her best to avoid public displays of affection with Drake on stage, and Drake being in interviews talking about Rihanna as if she's the love of his life, but someone who doesn't necessarily think as highly of him as he may think of her. I mean, he said it 15 years ago back in 2010. She played him like how he plays most women in his life, with no real respect, no value for them, and being present in their lives one day and then gone the next. And I think it's Rihanna treating Drake like this that has made him act like an absolute child with many of the other men within his life. We saw this back in 2012 when Chris Brown sent bottles to his table and Drake responded by saying, "I'm sleeping with the love of your life." We saw it again when Drake celebrated the fact that A$AP Rocky and Rihanna had a child together by dropping his track Fear of Heights, where he's randomly dissing Rihanna at being very average at intercourse, while also dissing Rocky for being an active father and husband in Rihanna's life, which was ironically the role that Drake wanted to play for a very long time. And I think this is a very classic case of wanting what you can't have. Drake always wanted to take his relationship with Rihanna to the next level, while she was kind of always in and out of his life when it was convenient for her, and almost played him like a kid, like that young kid that she first met on the video shoot of her first single. And I think the biggest lesson that we can take away from this whole debacle is that revenge is most definitely a dish best served cold. Anytime Rihanna would leave Drake for another man, Drake would do his best to engage in some sort of back and forth with that man to show the world that he was the superior artist or man in general. And this always seemed to backfire on Drake. With Chris Brown, he was the one who ended up with Rihanna after Drake started that whole back and forth with Chris in the club. With A$AP Rocky, Drake was very quick to come out and diss both him and Rihanna on his song Fear of Heights right after they had their first child together. That would be the equivalent of serving revenge on a hot dish, aka taking it straight out the oven. Instead, his revenge on Rihanna and A$AP Rocky, and really anyone who's going at him, whether it be Kendrick, Rick Ross, Metro Boomin, whoever, would be to serve that revenge as a cold dish, aka let it sit out, let it simmer, let the issue fizzle down before you come back out and retaliate. If Drake just waited before rushing all his disses out at Kendrick, maybe he would have came with a more calculated plan. Meanwhile, everyone was mocking Kendrick after Drake dropped push-ups, saying that Kendrick wasn't prepared for this battle, but 3 weeks later he drops Euphoria, and from there it was over. It showed that he had a calculated plan of attack. With Rihanna, Drake always seems to come out as the petty one, whether it be in interviews, diss records, or fights with her ex-boyfriends in clubs. If he instead maybe took a step back, maybe started a family and had a marriage of his own, gained some maturity and perspective from that, and focused on living a happier life, he might not be caught up in this beef with A$AP Rocky or Rihanna, who are now living a happy married life with 2 kids. Or Kendrick Lamar, who seems to be living a happy life with his fiancée and kids, or Childish Gambino, who recently also came at Drake, who is also living a discreet, happy life with his family and kids, or, you know, the other 10 million people that are beefing with Drake currently. I would tell A$AP Rocky the same thing. Don't be so quick to come and respond to Drake's Family Matters diss track. Instead, take the time to craft the bars and the plan that would be needed to go up against a guy as battle-tested as Drake is. Because while he may have lost Rihanna, he may have lost to Kendrick Lamar, he may have lost to Pusha T, debatably lost to Common. If there's one thing Drake knows, it's how to engage in a petty back and forth with the core of the issue centering around a woman. And while that may have led to the beginning of his demise, as he found himself in quite the predicament after mentioning the names of Pusha T and Kendrick's fiancés, his petty back and forth over Rihanna might be the fuel that Drake needs to lyrically destroy A$AP Rocky and regain the love of the hip-hop community. But that's all contingent on the subject matter of A$AP Rocky's next album, and And all I would tell him is, like the title of that album, don't be dumb. Alright guys, and if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you do subscribe, you do leave a like, and you comment on what you want to see next and who you think would win in a battle going forward. Drake or A$AP Rocky? Or, you know, maybe Rihanna comes out of retirement, drops an album of her own, and puts a little sneak disses aimed at Drake on that project. Let's see. Who knows? But I'll definitely be here to cover it, and I will catch you guys in the next one.